It's 5:30, so I probably won't get many people or questions on this video, but I figure whoever comes on here at this time will divinely be. Um, this is a live Q&A, episode 27. I would have just done a normal video where I create a topic, but I just couldn't pick one, so I figured I would open it to a live Q&A, even though I said, you know, it's early, so there may not be too much engagement on here, but if not, then we'll just freestyle. But there's a fundamental reason, basically, that this message that I share, I wouldn't even say teach, because there's no teaching. The message that I share, there's a reason it does not change. Good morning, Jose. What this means is for the past 3 or 4 years since my awakening, more so I'd say 4, I've been putting out videos, I've been putting out statuses, and the message has not changed. And I constantly get asked on these videos and in my inboxes, you know, how do I know all this stuff? How do I speak with such certainty? How am I so sure? And this is what I would like to reveal to everyone. The reason why this message cannot change, it does not change, because you have directly connected yourself to Source. And I always tell people to use the words we use with caution. So when you say you're connected to Source, do not mistake yourself. Because a connection implies separateness. It implies you need to plug something in, connect to something, do something to become. So understand, when you are connecting to Source, there is no actual doing, there is no actual result. It is the realization and the direct experience of God itself. What this message is that I share, basically, is that of the timeless, that of the selfless. So there is no self, there is no one that awakens. When you truly awaken, you know yourself to your core. And as I said, you are connected to Source, but not as a connection, meaning you need to do something. You have made the instantaneous realization within yourself that you are already complete, whole, and everything you seek. You understand that through various forms, words, guises, stories, you have been hiding from yourself. That's what humanity does, because our greatest, or our truest face, I should say, is what shakes us to our core. It terrifies us. Because the ego only knows one face, one name, one story. But your truest presence has no absolute face, has no self, has no name, has no attachment. And this is why I tell people to pay attention to the parts of you that you assume to be you that can be changed by either space or time. Because if you or what you think to be you can be changed or influenced by space or time, it is not what you are, and instead it is revealing to you your truest nature. So if this face and this image can be changed, it is not what I am. If my name can be forgotten in time and lost, it's not who you are. If all the attachments, your jobs, your family, your titles, and all that stuff that you exist through day in to day out can change, it's not who you are. And that's what's so beautiful about change. Change is constant, yet it's always revealing to you your truest self. When you can let go of what you've assumed to be yourself, only then can you see into the limitlessness of your nature. But until then, we exist through comfort and belief. So what this means, basically, is I could end this video right now and you could not hear from me for 10 years. I could go silent and not make another video for 10 years. And after the 11th year, let's just say I make a video, the message still would not have changed. And that's what I want to focus on in this video, as to why. Why can't the message change? Why isn't it influenced by phenomenon like COVID or things that happen on the surface level? You see, COVID and all these things that take place on your news stations and things, they don't influence this message. It has no relation to this message, because this message is beyond the surface. That's why Buddha referred to the unknown as the great beyond. And he talked about only those who have gone into the great beyond can basically understand what is being lost when you experience the ego death. And it's kind of just like what I was talking about. If you can be changed, it's not what you are. And that's what the great beyond reveals to you. It allows you to release yourself, release the attachment and the belief that you contain yourself into. And that is directly why seeing is believing, because your entire world, your entire body, your entire existence is made up through your beliefs. We think we're existent on some place we call Earth, because we can create a model behind it and a story behind it. But when you get to the nitty-gritty of things and you're honest with yourself, these are just beliefs. Just because a scientist or someone with a degree can prove to you or replicate a model or create a model or something based on this story that we've been told about ourselves, does not mean it's true. It is still a belief, and that's the hardest part for the ego to accept, is that facts are just beliefs. They're thoughts. There is no actual fact, because there is no right or wrong. It is the same interpreter, the same witness behind what's determining right or wrong. It's your presence. Your presence is in me. Your presence is in every single other being. So it's this presence that is determining the duality of right or wrong, good or bad, but it's always you. You are the wielder of duality. Duality is not a law here. Duality is what keeps the ego alive. But beyond the surface, there is no duality. You wield both sides behind your very eyes, and you project them outward. And that's why you have two sides to your brain, because God and man are in conspiracy with each other. And that's all we're doing. So what is reality? Reality, as Ramana Maharshi talked about it, is the one self. The one true self is reality. We mistake reality as appearance disappearance because of the attachment that has arisen within us. We become attached to what begins within us, and so we begin taking on this story of birthing. And eventually we must die with this birthing, since you have so heavily attached to the birthing. You must die with that birthing. And until you die, you won't understand what reality is. Reality will forever be appearance and disappearance, beginning and end. Here you are, here you aren't. But until you can merge this duality into the same presence, we won't understand reality, because reality does not change. Reality is constant. Reality is always here, it's always now. But again, we think we're in some place. This place is of nowhere but the mind. We project this place we think we are out from the mind through the two eyes and onto this screen that you call the world. You assume this to be the world because you've memorized the word for it, you've memorized the story, the definition, the model, the makeup, all that. But beyond the surface, this doesn't exist. Seeing is believing, because what you've mistaken as the world is your own mind. The only place you can transcend is the mind. The only place you can go is the mind. So for people asking, where do I go when I die? You will be here. The same incarnation, the same being, the same presence. Your name, your birthday, your gender may change, does not matter. Why? Because there is one singular presence behind male, female, and all duality. It will always be your presence, and presence has no gender. Presence has no attribute, has no personality. Presence is witness, which is what I am that I am means. You are the eternal witness to all that is. You and me exist because of the mind. Separation exists because of the mind. And some may say, well, that's the reason we're here. But on the contrary, some may say that's not why we're here. We're here to be free of the mind. So there is no right or wrong. You understand? The same presence is behind both sides. The one seeking to forget itself and the one seeking to remember itself. However, in all cases, they are all you. One, you identify yourself as source, as presence. Until then, you'll forever be just one name, just one image, one thing, trying to study and understand the entirety. And the reason we'll never make the connection is because we've separated source from everything else. The letter I is the entire makeup of the whole world. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When you speak of yourself, I am afraid, I have a question, I am seeking something, I wonder. I is your connection to this World Wide Web, if you will. I is what connects you. It's your antenna. And this is the receiver. But remember, inside and outside are one and the same. So we think that there's an outside world going on separately to what happens within us, when this is not the case. And this is the reason that awakening feels so frightening for some, and why some start saying, well, I feel so alone here. But understand, this is just your mind playing tricks on you. Your mind will start telling you you're alone here, you're the only one, but look around. The reason you're telling yourself you're alone is because you are identifying the I as Tyler, as the body, as the image. Do not fool yourself. You are not alone here because you are not contained or limited to a name, a singular body, or singular anything. And this is why I say, look around. You are everywhere. There is nothing or no one that you are not. There is nowhere that you are not. And this is why the whole question of where will I go when I die is pointless. It is meaningless, and it cannot be answered. Why? Because it's looking at you right in the face. Where will I go when I die? It's all around you. You're everywhere. You're everything. You don't go anywhere. And that's what Ramana Maharshi's last words were to his disciples. They were all surrounding his bed and crying and mourning the loss of him. And he says, and mind you, he was dying in this stage. So it took every ounce of breath to just speak these few words, but he spoke them anyway. And from what I've read, it caused him pain to speak because he could barely breathe. But still, he spoke these words because it's almost like he was teaching this to his disciples his whole life. And up until the moment of his death, they believed in it until it was time for him to part ways with the physical, until it was time for him to leave. They lost his message completely. And what he said to them was, they say that I am dying, but where will I go? I will be here. Those were his last words to his disciples. They say that I am dying, but where will I go? I will be here. Do not let this image fool you. It's guaranteed to transition. It's guaranteed to change. It's guaranteed to become the next. But always remember, the next there is here. And you're always here. That's the greatest trick. There is no place to go beyond the mind. There is no place you can go or transcend beyond the mind itself. The mind is everything. And not everybody can fathom what that means when you say the mind is everything. But if you think of the world as person, place, or thing, that is directly everything you are experiencing in your day-to-day life. And so if all those things, people, places, and things are all your mind, then it's time to start turning our lens in on itself. No longer shall you project these questions outside of yourself. We're looking into infinite space for this alien because we're projecting our questions outside of ourselves, separating source from itself. You'll never find what you're looking for. This is equivalent to Alice walking into Wonderland, to infinity and beyond, never finding the exit, never catching the white rabbit, because you are what you seek, and what you are seeking does not actually exist as what you believe it does, because who you even believe you are doesn't exist. And that's the great conspiracy. When you reach there, or you make it to the end of the tunnel, you will still be here. You will haven't have gone anywhere. You haven't traveled anywhere. That's what the Ouroboros represents. What is actually traveling? What is actually moving? Nothing is actually moving because nothing is actually separate. This is why Papa G wrote a book about, the title was called Nothing Ever Happened. And obviously the average person would read that, nothing ever happened, and not make the connection as to how can nothing happen? Things are always happening. What he means is nothing ever happened because source has never been separate to itself. So for something to happen, there has to happen to someone, right? And this is what the ego is. The ego is that someone that things are constantly happening to, and you're looking to God, or you're praying for hope, or, something to change. But the ego does not realize it's so much more than it's pretending to be. And you have the power all along. Just like Galinda says to Dorothy, you've had the power all along. Nothing changes until you do, because there is not you in the world, there is just you. And it is your presence that makes up the entire world. So until you open the third eye, which again, let me speak on opening the third eye, because opening the third eye has been very distorted. You have all these new age videos on how to open the third eye by stop using fluoride, by filtering your water, by doing this, doing that. Let me ask you, for the people that are doing this, okay, you don't just randomly one day start, seeing things differently because of something you've done. You can convince yourself that this is maybe changing how it. And let me say this, I'm not saying that what you're doing can't change how you feel. But if you're trying to produce the result of opening the third eye, there is no doing possible to achieve this. It is a mental and metaphorical realization that happens internally within you. And this is me giving free advice, because all these videos that I see are people selling processes on how to open the third eye. You have to do this, you have to cut out that, you've got to do that, and go here. When it's as simple as it is a realization achieved within you that cannot be done through a doing or an act or a practice. So if you're trying to practice or do to open the third eye, you are exerting your efforts meaninglessly. It's pointless. Again, you can convince yourself that you're seeing results, or you're getting where you need to be. But deep down, we both know what you're referring to by opening the third eye. And it's not some phenomenon where you start seeing through walls, or you start seeing through matter, or you can see the atoms and the freaking objects that you're experiencing. Opening the third eye is as simple as understanding that your words, the words that you speak out of your mouth, are basically containers. Words are water. That's what I've said to a lot of people that I've taught. Words are water. They take shape as any container. And I've said this before. We all have a word for these right here. We're all going to agree that these are keys. But you can change the name for this overnight. If I start calling this a pencil or a pen, and then I taught kids that don't know any better, this is a pencil, this is a pen, you'll rewrite history. You'll rewrite what this is. because the words don't exist. The words are containers. And what I mean by that is we've allowed the objects that we see through the eyes to be memorized as the words of the mind. You see what I'm saying? So the world has no shape. The world is shapeless. But you, the observer, determine that shape, because you're not seeing the world, you're seeing yourself. And this is the same thing that the spoon boy referenced to Neo in the Matrix. Do not try and bend the spoon, that's impossible. Instead, only realize the truth, there is no spoon. Then you'll see that it's not the spoon that's bending, it's only yourself. Do not try and change the world, that's impossible. Instead, only realize the truth, it's not the world changing, it is only yourself. It's the very same principle. The objects that you are experiencing throughout your daily life does not exist as the word you have memorized it as. But that's what the falling of man is. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It's past tense, meaning it was God, it was whole, it was presence. All words belong to silence, and silence is just presence. That is source. So we didn't fall from heaven, from presence, God, until we spoke the first word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, you. The Word was with you. Now, whether some TV, your mom, your father, any outside influence taught you to speak that first word is irrelevant. You had to physically speak that word out of your mouth, and you had to physically attach a definition to that word in your mind. It doesn't matter the influence of where the definition, the word, or the story came from. The point is, you spoke the first word, you created its definition, and now apply that to every object and item or person or place that you have experienced. You've only experienced your own mind. You're not looking at the world, you're looking at yourself. You're shaping the world through your mind, because everything we see comes from directly our beliefs, which is why seeing is believing. You're seeing nothing but your own mind. This is why we have people on the internet talking about the earth being flat, the earth being hollow, the earth being round. How? If the earth is absolutely one shape, how can you have people online talking about the earth being numerous shapes? And they're not joking. They're with full conviction believing that the earth is either flat, round, hollow, this, that. It doesn't matter. These people believe what they believe. Why? Because they see it. And what does that sight come from? It mirrors their beliefs of themselves. That's why I tell you, the body and earth are in conspiracy with each other. They mirror one another. Who you believe you are is where you believe you are. And vice versa. Where you believe you are is who you believe you are. This is why us as a human race is still looking and pointing our telescopes into the skies for the alien. It's not up there, it's in here. It's behind your very eyes. It's contained right within your mind. And that's why you can't find it. You are already it. But you've fallen for it. You've fallen for the game you're playing with yourself. And that's what an awakening is actually realizing that it is you the whole time. Many choose to hide behind government, hide behind aliens, hide behind Arcturians, Nocturians, all these different life forms of advanced civilizations, but what they represent is your greatest power. And rather than you projecting it into some unknown or made-up entity, understanding that that entity has derived from your presence. Remember, all books were written by the same hand. Why? Because it doesn't matter male or female. The presence is both. Presence is male, presence is female. It was you, your presence, that has written every book. It was you, your presence, that has shaped every entity. You talk about you've read all the Bibles, you've read all the books, and they're telling the same story. Well, congratulations, it's you the whole time. There aren't numerous gods. It's you telling the same freaking story over and over through different cultures, different incarnations, different awakenings, but they're all you. And that's why they're all telling the same story, because it is you and it only is you. The greatest and grandest conspiracy is not government. That is surface level. That's for people who want to remain in conspiracies. Government is just a stepping stone into your truest nature, into your truest power. Think of how many people, as of today, think the government is trying to enslave them. You couldn't, and I've said this many times, if the government wanted to enslave you, they would round you up with your family and you would be enslaved. If they wanted to kill you, they would round you and your family up and kill you. There wouldn't be this dragged out plot of trying to kill hundreds of millions of people throughout a 100-year span. It would be done in 2 days. You would be gone. So eventually we must understand that these government conspiracies aren't leading you into what you're seeking. They never end because they are an algorithm that goes on unto forever. The question is, how long will you keep playing this game with yourself? The hardest thing you can do is admit to yourself you are not who you think you are. You're not who you've assumed you are. At last, you can face that ugly mirror people call Satan, people call government. And we refuse to look at that mirror. Why? Because it represents evil, dark. But what it also represents is your hidden identity. And the clock strikes midnight if you face that mirror. Because you will no longer be able to pretend, I'm just a human, I'm just Tyler, I'm just this. If you face that mirror, you will discover who you truly are. And this is why religions have created Satan. Satan is not an entity, it represents your greatest power. And that's why if you are terrified of Satan, you will never look at it. But that's what you're prolonging by not looking, is you're not looking at your greatest power. And it's reverse psychology. If I paint this as evil and ugly and dark, nobody's going to want to look there. But little do you know, all that you seek is just behind all that you fear, right there, in that mirror. And understand, it will terrify you to look into it. It will shake you to your core. But again, all that you seek is just beyond all that you fear. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. Fear is just like every other word. It's like water. It will shape itself in accordance to your beliefs. It will shape itself in accordance to who you believe you are. So if you fully believe within yourself that you have birthed, you have begun, then one of your biggest fears will obviously mirror that, which is the end, death. It will be terrifying. But that's all fear does, is it mirrors our foundation of beliefs. And that foundation is who we are. So that's what all of our fears are mirroring, replicating, is who you believe you are to your core. Someone said, what do you think happens at death? The very same thing that happens through life. The very same thing that got you up to this point now is what happens at death. What's allowed you to come to know yourself now is what will happen at death. And this is why I believe it was Jiddu Krishnamurti who says death will not change you, right? So don't look to death to change you. It won't change you, but reveal to you your truest nature, your truest identity. but nothing happens at death. And that's what I think deep down most people's greatest fear is. And when you fully understand what death is, you fully understand how pointless suicide is. Because essentially what people who suicide are saying and convincing themselves of is they are this body, they are this mind, they are this name. So what they're proposing to themselves is they can quit, they can leave, they can run from who they are. But you cannot run from who you are, because again, who you are always is. It does not come and it does not go. It does not part ways with you. What parts ways with you is all your beliefs and thoughts you've had of yourself. All these things that you memorize as yourself are exactly what will part ways with you. What will remain is the presence. And it's, again, silence, presence. What is allowing you to be present here? Before any word is spoken, before any thought is produced, there is just a witness here, a universal witness, and its presence. And this presence cannot be touched, it cannot be influenced, it cannot be guided, directed, controlled through anything of the physical. No man, woman, entity, government, corporation can touch this presence. And this is why Jesus sat there and let these Romans torture him to death. This is why Jesus, or Yeshua, whichever name you prefer, the name does not matter, but I'll use both names for people who care. What his ultimate message was displaying knowing yourself to your core. If you know yourself to your core, you have no one to fight. There is nothing to fight. And this is why he refused to fight. Not only that, but love was the answer. He wasn't surrendering to the Romans. He was surrendering to himself. And the reason he was letting them torture him, whip him, was because he knew they can strike my body, they can rip my flesh, and they can cut, eat, drink from my bones, but they will never penetrate into the core of my being. Which is why he so comfortably sat there and displayed the ultimate message of love. There was no fight. There was no anger. He understood why they were doing this to him. Why? Because he understood he was them. This isn't a belief. This isn't a thought. This isn't a, something you believe in or something. When you know, you know. And it's as literal as that. It's not a metaphor. It's not something you've got to try to remember or practice. When you know, you know. But this is why I call it the point of no return. Because once you know, you can never pretend not to know again. You can never dream again. And what I mean by dream again is create illusions for yourself, illusions for reality. Once you awaken to reality, reality is. It's like me. I can't go back to sleep. I can't pretend to just be Tyler ever again. I've gone to the point of no return. And that's why I say when you enter, who you were entering as does not come out, never comes out. That's why it is a point of no return. That is an ego death. So in a sense, you've never come out of DMT or the medicine or psychedelics. You're always in. Once you go in, you're always in. And any shaman will tell you it's because you are the medicine. You're not taking some foreign substance. You are the medicine, and it's showing you to yourself. Without the mind present, there is just what's called void. void. It's the absence of space, it's the absence of time, it's the absence of everything. Yet, nothing is everything, and everything is nothing. And how is that so? Because the presence is all pervading. It permeates everything, everywhere. In fact, there is no where. Where is personal, that's for person, that's for ego. When you awaken to the nature of Source as yourself, there is no where, there is no place. All you see forth is what people call void, but it's not a void. It's your presence, and it's life itself. It is existence itself, and it's everywhere around you. There's nowhere that you are not. There's no thing that you are not. The core to your being is existence. And you're all around. So again, I'm just going to reiterate what I spoke about in the beginning of this video. But everything I've said in this video is why I could turn this video off and disappear for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I could come back and do a video again when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old, and the message would still be the same. It does not change, because again, you have directly become Source. And I will reiterate, it's not a becoming where this is a result of what you have done, or it's a result of a practice you've achieved. No, it's the complete opposite. Once you realize your greatest presence, your greatest being already is, then you'll realize there is nothing you can do, no practice that can be achieved, no mantra that can be repeated to allow you to be what already is. And that's the greatest trick. The ego plays these games where you have blockages, you have things that need realignments, you have, illusory problems. You're seeing things that aren't there and failing to see what is. And that's why I love that quote, the pursuit of reality is the most dangerous of undertakings, because it takes you from the reality and has you seeing what, seeing the dream, but not seeing reality, And it's very true. So what is the purpose of such suffering, and who determines how long someone lives? Some are in a disabled body and come for a long life, some healthy and live a year. See, that's where us as ego, we try to force things to make sense. We want there to be a divine answer for why someone can smoke cigarettes their whole lives, never gets cancer. Someone smokes cigarettes for a year, gets lung cancer. There is no meaning. There is no meaning to it. And that's just as raw as the answer is. There's no meaning. We try to force meaning. We try to make sense out of chaos. There is none. There is no sense. However, to answer the first part of your question, the purpose of such suffering is to eventually shake us and awaken us from this dream that we've been living in. That's the inevitable goal. There's a quote, and I'm going to paraphrase again, it's hard to remember all these quotes, but there's a quote that says, it says, "Don't you see that what you think to be the world is only your own mind?" He says, There will come a day where you seek, the way out of this world by any means necessary because it's driven you so madly insane. But he says the problem is, people don't want to be freed. They don't want the actual answer. What they really want is to keep it going just a little longer. And that's what government conspiracies and all these things are doing. It keeps you assuming that you've got a head or a one-up on life or on what's going on. But understand, these are just keeping you immersed in the dream that you're seeking the freedom of. Right? So it's like you are what's keeping you. It's like what Rumi says, why are you stuck in this prison when the door is so wide open? You are what's keeping you stuck in the prison, but you are unaware that it is you. Right? So we are what gets in our own way, and that is the hardest part. That goes back to you've had the power all along. So that is why we have the meaning for the suffering so bad. We suffer eventually to shake ourselves out of this dream world, or to maybe get to the root of where the suffering, lies. And from my experience, my opinion, the root of all suffering is separation. And that's why I so heavily talk about or share the message of non-duality, which is oneness. Because in oneness, there is no suffering. There is no sufferer. There is no one, no thing separate to the whole. So it is liberation. It is the way out. And this isn't a liberation where you're numbing yourself, you're numbing your feelings, where you're not feeling anything and just being a zombie. You feel everything. Only you know who you are. So you don't harbor these feelings and emotions and attach them to your identity. You feel everything very deep, but you don't attach it to your identity or who you are. It is purged from the being, from the vessel. Emily said, hi Emily, good morning. Emily said, how do you stay so calm even when messed up things happen, and do you remember your dreams? So, how do I stay so calm? Basically, it's just like I said with news stories, governments, anything that they put out on the news, you have to understand this is an algorithm. News, story outlets, medias, these are algorithms that are always going to repeat. See, the people want to try and ban CNN or ban Fox News or blame them for this or that, or, it's all their fault. No. We are the consumers. We are what keeps the whole thing going, right? So we pay attention to it. We subscribe to it. We tune into it. We buy the newspapers. We listen to it. We are emotionally charged beings. And the people who are in government and positions of power know that. But yeah, how I stay so calm is I just stay grounded in myself. I stay grounded with my message, with who I am. I don't see an outside world as most people do. Most people will describe the world or the earth and, we see planets and stars. I don't see the same. I don't see the same. Because again, everything mirrors your own belief. So I recognize these news stories, these there's a threat of war between China and U.S. and, all this stuff. It's like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And guess what? It's already happened. There's nothing you can do to prevent. There's no sense of there's no control beyond your sense of control, right? And that's why control is an illusion. No one controls anything here. Not the CEO of the biggest company, not the president, not anyone in government, not these shadow government people. No one is in control. No one has any control. Just because you pass a bill and court stamp seal it does not mean it has control over me or my being. And the same with all things. This is why the native tribes and ancestors didn't need to create value out of materials and things like that. They knew who they were. They didn't need a system to govern them. They knew who they were. And that's why it was so easy for them to get along. How hard would it be to get along if we all knew we were the same person, the same being? Then we wouldn't have value between our shoes and whatnot. It would be as simple as, if your feet were cold or needed a padding, I will give you shoes. It does not matter what brand or what they look like is on them, because again, you have not created a value out of materials. That does not matter. We're all equal. We're all the same being. But that's the biggest thing, staying grounded in yourself and who you are. And again, never falling for this illusion that people think to be the world. It's not the world, it's yourself. But again, when I say yourself, I'm not talking about your name, your image. That's not the self I'm talking about. So when I say we're fighting ourselves, I'm talking about we're fighting with ourselves as God, as source. You're directly going against yourself, and we don't realize it because what we fight to preserve doesn't even exist. And that's what the irony is with all these people trying to revolt and overthrow governments. At the end of the day, when your government is overthrown and the very system that feeds you and your families and keeps the shelves full has collapsed because of you, then what? No one has a plan. No one's thought it through because, again, we are emotionally charged beings. And nobody understands that a revolution cannot be televised because it happens not in the fields, not in your city streets, behind your eyes. That's what a revolution is. But again, the people don't want that. They think they want power. They think they want sovereignty. But most people want the governing. They want to be governed. They need to be governed. They need to be told what's what. They need some type of form of rules, guidelines, boundaries, things you can or can't do. Most people need that. And they don't even realize it. But for people seeking their sovereignty, understand it's already yours. You are the government. You are these entities you hide behind.
You still going to the gym?
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
What?
7 o'clock.
Let me get ready. Got up a little late. I kept attacking my freaking head this morning. I didn't get my sleep. Kept attacking my head.
Feel free to ask a question if you'd like.
Not fun.
So how would I think to bring up children in this life? So that's a tricky one. Children is where, spirituality gets tough, because a lot of people, I personally don't have children, but, a lot of people are aware, look within and all these things, but I can admit myself as an outsider looking in, it could be tricky having kids. You have this practice, or you have this understanding of spirituality down, or something down, right? But children can make it very dicey, very complex. The best thing I can offer, and again, I will say I don't have kids, so I'm not trying to tell people how to raise their kids or anything, and I totally understand. It is the hardest job on this planet. It's a full-time job. I totally understand, right? But there is no way to honestly teach a child philosophy, to teach them spirituality. Because what you don't realize is the reason you're into spirituality is because you've become something, and that something is an adult. You're trying to get back to your innocence, which is just your presence, being alive. A child embodies that. They don't need you to teach them spirituality. In fact, they're teaching you spirituality. They're showing you to yourself. When you see a child get overjoyed with emotion or excited for something so simple that an adult is like, I don't get it. That is that child embodying bliss. No thought, no practice needed. There's no blockage. There's nothing wrong with them. They are bliss. They embody what you are trying to become again. They're showing you the way. Simplicity is the answer. But an adult is not simple. Adult is complex. Adulthood is complex. So as far as children, I would say, and understand this. We can teach our children, right and wrong, how to treat people nice, this and that. But understand, for the most part, children already have this tool. They already have this intelligence. However, it's how you treat them that can influence or change that. So when you have children who are not so nice or bullies, understand it's how you're speaking to them, how you communicate to them, or someone around them that's communicating with them, that's displaying to them. That's how you communicate. That's how you speak. So I would say we can teach our kids things like that, but as far as if your question is to teach kids spirituality or how you would go about, I wouldn't recommend doing it at all, because what it's going to do is more damage. It's going to basically produce the same result that we as adults are trying to produce. We're trying to force a result out of spirituality by aligning our chakras, by filling crystals with the moon's whatever, by all these processes. I won't even name them off. But the same way we're doing all these things, running ourselves mad, trying to become what we already are, that's exactly what a child would do if you taught them your philosophy. Because they already are what you're trying to achieve. Mhm. So someone said, how can we cope? How can I understand the dark side of life, existence itself? It depends what you refer to as the dark side. Because when you say the dark side, I would take that as your hidden identity. Or are you speaking of like evil, dark? So I'm sorry to hear about your dad. Um, how to cope with it? It's hard to answer because not Not everyone will like the answer. But we're still in the time where we're convinced beyond a doubt we're human, this human race. But what we don't realize is this race is with no one but ourselves. And we're all going to make it to the same finish line at the same time, if you will. So what I've told people, you know, again, with all these vaccines and stuff, I don't personally believe you have to have the vaccine injected into you, you know, for you to have it. I think you can also catch it or just have, you know, it's in the air. But what I believe was behind what I believe is behind the whole vaccines and, you know, it becoming mandatory and then not is transmutation. You know, we're mutating ourselves, we're mutating our genes. If you look at the patent for the COVID vaccine, all it discusses is how it mutates genes and can influence genes. And I know a lot of people are against the transhumanism and all that agenda, and they think that, you know, we're being turned into cyborgs or something. But again, as this whole video message has been shown, you know, I've said, sorry, it's getting late, so I'm getting tired. But basically, it's all you, it's all your mind. Seeing is believing. Who you believe you are is what you will see out in the world. So we're mutating into our next form, if you will. But we're gonna meet this form as if we think there's two different forms meeting. There's the human and then there's artificial intelligence. But for those who have already awakened, they're gonna realize it's not an artificial form meeting organic form. It is God, the singularity, the one itself, meeting itself for the first time, and inevitably realizing and recognizing itself through another veil. And this is why I tell people your wires are already in your body. What you think to be your veins are your wires, very intelligently designed and hidden from you. The same way a wire travels or sends, you know, an electric flow or current through the wire is the same way your veins are sending a current of your blood cells and blood throughout your body. And those could also be interpreted as signals. It's the very same thing. Your veins are your wires. And what you'll come to realize is you've never been human. And it is this human entity that is assuming this to be artificial. But what you have called artificial and what you have also called organic does not exist. They're one and the same. And that's again what the Ouroboros represents. We've searched for everywhere only to find ourselves, because it's us the whole time. Yeah. Can't remember much before 5 or 6. Yeah, and I'm just getting off work. I work overnights, so 8 to 6 o'clock. And this morning I got off at 5 instead of 6. But yeah, I work overnights at Home Depot. Yep, a lot of fun. But if you'd like to contact me, Anna, you can speak to me on Facebook. My name's Tyler Ugaldi on Facebook. Or you can message me on here, even I'll respond to. Yeah, it's getting past my time here, so I'm gonna head out and go to bed. Hope everyone has a great day. And if you have any comments or topics for the next video, please feel free. Comment. Thank you.